What kind of person laughs at Judge Caprio in a packed courtroom and still thinks she is the smartest person in the room? Before this hearing was over, a woman in designer heels would go from smirking at the bench to standing there with shaking hands, mascara on her cheeks, and a voice so small nobody could believe it was the same person. Drop a comment telling us if you think arrogance always gets exposed in the end, because this case starts with a laugh and ends with a lesson nobody in Providence would forget. At 8:43 on a gray Tuesday morning, the third-floor courtroom inside Providence City Hall was already full. The fluorescent lights hummed. The old benches creaked. A coffee cup rolled softly under a seat in the back, and every head turned when the side door opened and Vanessa Lasker stepped in like she was arriving late to a lunch she did not want to attend. Hit that subscribe button if you believe the truth has a way of showing up right on time. Because the way she walked in told everyone she expected this whole thing to be over in 5 minutes. She was 38 years old, tall, sharp-boned, and carrying herself with the brittle confidence of someone who had spent years mistaking intimidation for control. Her camel Burberry trench still had raindrops on the shoulders. Her black St. Laurent tote hung from one elbow. Her red-soled Louboutins clicked against the tile with enough attitude to make half the gallery look up before she ever said a word. She wore oversized tortoiseshell sunglasses indoors until the bailiff asked her to remove them. When she slid them up into her highlighted hair, people saw the expression that would make this moment unforgettable. Not nervous, not embarrassed, amused. Like this video, if you believe the most dangerous kind of pride is the kind that thinks consequences are for other people. Vanessa set an iced brown sugar espresso on the defense table, glanced toward the camera mounted high in the courtroom, and gave a laugh that was just loud enough to be disrespectful and just soft enough to be deniable. All this, she said, letting her eyes drift across the room, for a traffic ticket. A few people in the back exchanged looks. One older woman in a navy cardigan actually inhaled sharply. The court clerk, Melissa Tran, who had been stamping files with mechanical precision all morning, froze for half a second before continuing. Bailiff Thomas Keene lifted his chin, the way men do when they are deciding whether something just crossed a line. And Judge Frank Caprio looked up. If you have ever watched a room go quiet because one person knows exactly how to use silence, you know what happened next. He did not slam a gavel. He did not scold her. He did not lean forward or raise his voice. He just looked at Vanessa over the rim of his glasses with that calm expression he was known for, the expression that somehow felt kinder and stricter at the same time. "Good morning," he said. Vanessa smiled the kind of smile people wear when they want to show they are not taking you seriously. "Sure," she said, "morning." Share this with someone who needs to see what happens when confidence turns into disrespect. Because the first 30 seconds of this hearing already felt like the beginning of a clip that millions would talk about. Melissa called the case into the record. Case number PVD-MT 2511847, City of Providence versus Vanessa Marie Lasker. Violations include standing in an emergency loading zone, failure to obey a crossing guard, and negligent operation resulting in a municipal citation. Incident date October 14, 2025. Hearing date March 18, 2026. That was when Vanessa laughed again. Not a full laugh. Worse, one of those little disbelieving scoffs people make when they think the world is being dramatic around them. "Negligent operation," she said. "That's cute." The courtroom reacted the way dry grass reacts to a spark, tiny whispers, a shifting bench, somebody muttering, "Wow." The older woman in the navy cardigan dropped her eyes to her hands. Judge Caprio folded his hands. "Ms. Lasker, you requested a full hearing rather than paying the citations or entering no contest. Is that correct?" "Yes," she said, "because this is ridiculous." "What part is ridiculous?" She glanced around like she was waiting for the audience to back her up. The part where I was stopped for maybe 90 seconds outside a clinic, and now suddenly we are acting like I caused a citywide tragedy. Judge Caprio nodded once. I see. There are moments when a person mistakes calm for weakness. Everyone in that room knew they were watching one. Vanessa had spent the last 11 years building a boutique home decor business called VN & Co. out of Garden City Center in Cranston. She had once been the kind of woman other people described as driven. Then life began stripping labels off her one by one. Her marriage to Jordan Lasker had imploded the year before after months of ugly financial fights. Her Irene had started showing signs of dementia. Her son, Mason, had gone from clingy to distant almost overnight. Her business lease was going up. A vendor in New Jersey was threatening legal action over unpaid invoices. She slept 4 nights a week on the velvet display sofa in the back office because she said driving home wasted time. But none of that was visible in the courtroom that morning. What was visible was the armor, the gloss, the impatience, the expensive clothes, the tone. And everybody, there thought they knew exactly what kind of woman she was. Assistant City Solicitor Anna DeLuca stood when the judge nodded to her. Anna was 41, compact, composed, and carrying a legal folder thick enough to make Vanessa's smile flicker for the first time. The prosecutor placed 3 marked exhibits on the table with deliberate care. Your Honor, Anna said, the city is prepared to present officer testimony, body camera footage, street surveillance, written statements, a clinic incident report, and a victim impact letter. That got Vanessa's attention. For a parking ticket, she said again, louder this time. Anna did not look at her, for the totality of the conduct at issue. Vanessa leaned back in her chair and folded her arms. This is insane. Judge Caprio looked down at the file. Ms. Lasker, before we proceed, you still have the option to resolve this matter without a full evidentiary hearing. There it was, the off-ramp. He explained it in plain language. She could enter no contest. The fines could be reduced. She could accept responsibility for the standing violation and the crossing guard violation, and the court would take her prior clean driving record into account. No spectacle, no testimony, no additional embarrassment. It was the kind of quiet mercy most people would have grabbed with both hands. Vanessa actually smirked. No, she said, I want the hearing because I want this on the record. If you've ever seen someone walk straight past the last easy exit, drop a comment telling us the exact moment you knew this was going to get ugly. Judge Caprio gave one slow nod. Very well, then let's put it on the record. The words hung there. Melissa marked the exhibits. The bailiff adjusted the monitor that would display the footage. Someone in the gallery whispered, "Oh boy," under his breath. At that point, most people assumed the case would be what Vanessa said it was. A minor traffic dispute stretched too far by an overzealous city attorney. Maybe there had been an argument. Maybe she had mouthed off. Maybe she was rude. The courtroom had seen 1,000 versions of that story. What they had not seen was who was sitting in the second row. On the left was a 71-year-old crossing guard named Nora Whitfield, wearing a pressed lavender blouse beneath a charcoal wool coat even though she was indoors. Her silver hair was pinned back carefully. Her left wrist still carried a soft beige support brace beneath the cuff. Next to her sat an 8-year-old boy in a school uniform sweater, swinging his feet a little too fast because children do that when rooms feel tense. His name was Liam O'Connell. On the right sat Elise Martle, 34, exhausted-looking and beautiful in the way tired mothers sometimes are, with her dark curls pulled into a low knot and a blue folder balanced on her lap. Beside her was no child, just an empty seat and a pink insulin pump pouch clipped to the outside of her bag. Vanessa had not noticed any of them yet. Officer Daniel Ruiz was sworn in first. He was 34 years old, 5 years into the Providence Police Department, with the steady, untheatrical manner of a man who had long ago learned that the loudest voice is usually the least useful one. He testified that at 4:17 p.m. on October 14, 2025, he responded to a radio call regarding a white 2023 Mercedes GLE 450 parked in the emergency loading zone outside St. Clair Family Clinic on Washington Street in downtown Providence. He spoke clearly, no embellishment, no hostility. There was a nurse attempting to guide a pediatric patient through the loading area, he said. The defendant's vehicle was stopped directly in front of the marked emergency access striping. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Officer Ruiz continued. He had approached the Mercedes, observed the engine still running, and found the defendant seated in the driver's seat holding a phone. He instructed her to move. According to his testimony, she replied, "I'm literally here for 1 minute. Relax." Vanessa laughed softly, "Because I was." Ruiz did not turn toward her. At that point, I saw a crossing guard, later identified as Ms. Nora Whitfield, signaling children through the crosswalk east of the clinic entrance. As the defendant pulled forward, she failed to obey the stop paddle being held out in traffic. Ms. Whitfield moved quickly to shield a child and fell backward. The little boy in the second row looked at his shoes. The courtroom's mood, she F dead, you could feel it. Not because people suddenly knew everything, but because they realized there was more than a parking ticket here. Judge Caprio looked at Vanessa. "Did you hear the officer's testimony?" "Yes," she said flatly, "and it is exaggerated." Ana DeLuca stepped closer to the monitor. "Your Honor, may the city play the initial body camera clip?" "You may." The screen blinked blue, then resolved into the tilted, chest-level view of Officer Ruiz walking toward a white Mercedes with hazard lights flashing. The audio crackled for a second. Then they heard horns in the background, a siren in the distance, and Ruiz's voice saying, "Ma'am, this is an emergency zone. I need you to move the vehicle now." Then Vanessa's recorded voice came through the speakers. "Oh my God, are you serious right now?" The courtroom went still. It was different hearing the words, raw, unfiltered, not polished by memory. Ruiz on video, "Yes, ma'am, move the car." Vanessa on video, "You people act like the city will collapse if I sit here for 30 seconds. There was the sound of a door unlocking. Then the body cam angle shifted as Ruiz moved to the side. In the distance, visible beyond the hood, a child in a red jacket and a gray backpack stood beside Nora Whitfield at the curb. Then the sound came. A sharp, irritated burst of laughter. Vanessa's own laugh. And as the SUV rolled forward, the stop paddle flashed into frame. Nora stepped out. Liam moved. The Mercedes jerked an extra foot. Nora twisted fast, got one hand on the boy's shoulder, and then slipped awkwardly, hitting the pavement with her left side. The child stumbled but stayed upright. A gasp went through the courtroom, so suddenly it sounded rehearsed. Vanessa stopped smiling. Not because she felt guilty yet, not fully, but because hearing your own voice before the worst moment of someone else's pain does something to the body. It changes the temperature under your skin. The clip ended with Ruiz shouting, hold on," and moving toward Nora as the camera bounced. Judge Caprio said nothing for 3 full seconds. Then he asked the question that cracked the air wide open. "Ms. Lasker," he said, "do you still believe we are here over a parking ticket?" Nobody moved. Vanessa swallowed. "I didn't hit her." And there it was. The first defense people reach for when their conscience is already losing, technical innocence. Judge Caprio rested back in his chair. There are ways to hit people without touching them. That line landed like a stone dropped in water. You could almost see it spreading across the benches. If that quote hit you hard, like this video, because what happened next is where the case stopped being about a violation and started becoming something much bigger. Ana called Nora Whitfield to the stand. Nora moved slowly, not theatrically, but with the careful economy of someone whose body no longer made promises lightly. She was sworn in. Up close, people could see the faint yellowing bruise that still lingered near the base of her thumb. Her shoes were practical black flats. Her voice, when she began, had a schoolteacher's steadiness to it. She had worked as a crossing guard near St. Clair and PS-14 for 9 years. She took the afternoon post because mornings were harder for her husband, Walter, who had Parkinson's and needed help bathing and dressing. On October 14, she had seen Liam O'Connell waiting to cross with 2 other children. She had stepped out with the stop paddle raised. She made eye contact with most drivers. That day, she said, the woman in the Mercedes looked directly at her and then looked away toward her phone. When the vehicle moved, Nora said, I knew she was not stopping. Vanessa shifted in her seat. That's not true. Judge Caprio looked at her once. She stopped talking. Nora did not cry. That made it worse. I pushed Liam back, she said. I lost my footing and went down on my wrist and hip. I remember the sound of my paddle hitting the street. It made a kind of clack. I remember because the child started crying when he heard it. Liam's small shoulders tightened at that. Anna asked about injuries. Nora explained that urgent care diagnosed a hairline fracture in her left wrist, bruising along her hip, and a lower back strain that made lifting her husband difficult for weeks. Her daughter had to take unpaid time off from work to help at home. She did not talk about pain like she wanted pity. She talked about logistics, about who had to cancel what, about how one careless moment pushes ripples through ordinary lives. That is what arrogance never sees. It sees a delay. It never sees the chain. Anna asked if she remembered anything the driver said. Nora's eyes moved once toward Vanessa, then back to the prosecutor. I remember her sounding annoyed, she said. I remember laughing. Vanessa shook her head instantly. Come on. Nora blinked but did not retaliate. I remember thinking, she said softly, that some people all when they are embarrassed, but it did not sound like embarrassment. The room went silent again. Everyone in the gallery knew this was the kind of testimony that stays with people long after the clip ends. Not loud, not dramatic, just true enough to hurt. Anna sat down. Judge Caprio folded his hands again. Ms. Lasker, you may ask the witness a question if you have one. Vanessa leaned forward. The old smirk came back, but weaker now, brittle around the edges. Yes, I have one. If you thought I was such a danger, why step in front of my car? The room actually recoiled. A man in the back whispered, Jesus. Melissa Tran stopped writing. Officer Ruiz looked down at the table for 1 second, the way professionals do when they know they have just heard something they will never respect. Nora did not lash out. Her answer was so simple it stripped Vanessa of the drama she was trying to create. Because there was a child there, she said. That was it. No speech. No rage. Just 8 words that made Vanessa sound smaller than any insult could have. Judge Caprio exhaled very slowly. Ms. Lasker, he said, this court is not going to tolerate blame being redirected onto the person doing her job to protect children. Vanessa opened her mouth. He raised one finger. She closed it. If you think people reveal themselves most clearly when they feel cornered, drop a comment telling us the moment Vanessa stopped controlling the room. Anna then called Liam's mother, Colleen O'Connell, but before the woman could reach the stand, Judge Caprio looked at the child sitting beside her and gently shook his head. No, he said, the boy stays seated. He has already had enough. That moment changed the temperature again. Because everybody had come in ready for justice. But when a judge protects a child before protecting procedure, people notice. Even Vanessa noticed. Her expression flickered, just for a second. Colleen testified briefly. Liam had nightmares for weeks. He was afraid of crosswalks. He kept asking whether cars could change their minds after they seemed stopped. She did not ask for maximum punishment. She said she came because Sometimes adults need to hear what children carry after they go home. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Her right foot, the one with the red sole flashing under the table, had started moving. Anna then moved to admit the clinic incident report. This is where the hearing should have slowed down. Instead, it detonated. The report was written by head nurse Janelle Brooks, age 46, a 15-year emergency care veteran who had been guiding a pediatric diabetic patient through the emergency loading zone when the white Mercedes blocked access. Anna summarized the report first. On October 14 at 4:16 p.m., 9-year-old Sophia Martel was arriving with dangerously low blood sugar, pale and semi-responsive. The vehicle obstruction forced clinic staff to reroute the wheelchair path around the front bumper, while medical equipment was carried by hand from the side entrance. Delay estimated at 43 seconds. 43 seconds. Vanessa gave a disbelieving laugh. Now we're counting seconds. Janelle Brooks herself stood up from the third row. The courtroom had not even realized she was there. She wore navy scrubs under a cream cardigan and looked like the kind of woman who has learned to stay composed while other people panic. There was no anger in her face. That made what happened next even harder to watch. "Yes," Janelle said from the aisle before being sworn. "Sometimes we count seconds." The judge allowed her to approach. After she was sworn in, Anna asked her to describe the scene. Janelle did. Sophia Martel had been in the back seat, lethargic, slurring words, drifting in and out. Her mother, Elise, was terrified. Another nurse had already brought a glucose kit to the entrance. When they reached the loading zone, the Mercedes was angled across the striped area. The driver had one hand up in a just-a-second gesture while looking at her phone. Anna asked if Janelle spoke to the driver. "Yes," she said. "I told her we had a child in distress." "And what did she say?" Janelle hesitated, not for effect, for restraint. "She said, then call a helicopter." The room broke. Not loudly, worse, little sounds, air leaving lungs, a whisper of "no way." Somebody behind Vanessa said, "Unbelievable." And then Elise Martel lowered her head and started crying silently into her hand. Vanessa spun toward her. "That's not what I meant." Judge Caprio's voice cut clean across the room. "Then what did you mean?" It was the first time he sounded cold. Vanessa looked trapped for the first time. "I was being sarcastic." Janelle looked at her, really looked at her, and said the line people would clip and repost 1,000 times if this were the kind of day that ended online. "Children in medical distress do not hear sarcasm," she said. "They hear delay." If that line deserved to go viral like this video now, because the next exhibit was the one that turned Vanessa's confidence into visible fear. The city played the surveillance footage from the clinic exterior. There was no body cam shake this time. No breathing, no movement, just a fixed high-angle feed with a time stamp in the upper right corner, 10/14/2025, 16/16/42. The white Mercedes sat diagonally across the striped emergency loading zone like a symbol of every selfish choice a city sees in one day. A nurse rushed into frame with a wheelchair. Elise Martel came into view holding the hand of a little girl in a pink puffer jacket. Sophia's head drooped against her mother's side. Janelle pointed at the vehicle. Vanessa's driver door opened. A hand waved dismissively. Then the audio, faint but usable, picked up 3 words everybody had already heard described. "Call a helicopter." Somebody in the back actually covered his mouth. The footage continued. Janelle moved the wheelchair around the front of the Mercedes. Sophia stumbled. Elise caught her. The clip had no dramatic music, no zoom, no editing. That is why it was devastating. Reality never performs for you. It just sits there and lets you look. Vanessa's face changed in stages. First irritation, then discomfort, then disbelief, then the first wash of color leaving her cheeks. She turned toward Anna. "You're making this sound like I wanted something bad to happen." Anna didn't take the bait. Intent is not the only thing the court considers when harm is foreseeable. Judge Caprio nodded. That is correct. And still somehow, Vanessa kept fighting. I had no idea the kid was that sick, she said. Nobody told me anything specific. Elise Martle stood up before Anna could respond. My daughter was gray, Elise said. What level of specific did you need? That was the moment the last sympathetic possibility in the room disappeared. Not because Vanessa was now evil. Human beings are rarely that simple, but because her instinct, even with evidence on the screen and victims 10 feet away, was still self-protection before remorse. Everyone in the room knew it. Everyone in the room felt it. And everybody watching a story like this would have felt the same outrage. Judge Caprio paused the hearing for 2 minutes. When he left the bench, the noise returned all at once. Whispering, coughs, the scrape of shoes. Vanessa sat rigid, staring at the table. Her phone lit up inside her tote, buzzing twice, then again. She did not touch it. Across the aisle, Liam leaned toward Nora and whispered something. Nora answered with a small smile and patted his hand with her uninjured one. Elise kept her eyes on the floor while Janelle rubbed circles between her shoulders. Officer Ruiz stood near the wall, hands clasped behind his back, staring straight ahead. Melissa Tran carried a new folder to the bench during the break. Vanessa noticed that. And for the first time, actual worry reached her eyes. When Judge Caprio returned, he looked at the additional folder, then at Anna. What is this? Supplemental exhibit, Your Honor. A written statement and letter the city received after the hearing was scheduled. From whom? Anna glanced toward the second row. From the child in the crosswalk, through his mother. Vanessa closed her eyes for half a second. That folder was thinner than the rest. Somehow that made it feel heavier. If you have ever felt your stomach drop because you knew the worst part had not happened yet, drop a comment telling us what you thought was in that letter. Judge Caprio asked whether the defense objected. Vanessa opened her mouth, then realized she had no real basis. No, she said quietly. Anna unfolded a single sheet of lined paper. The handwriting was large, uneven, and careful in the way children write when adults have told them the words matter. This is a letter from Liam O'Connell, Anna said. With the court's permission, I'll read it. The judge nodded. She read, My name is Liam and I am 8. I don't like talking in court, but my mom said I can write. The lady in the white car made Miss Nora fall. I thought the car was going to hit me because it kept moving even when the sign was out. My backpack got pulled and one shoe came off. Miss Nora told me to stand behind her. She said, I got you. My grandma says brave means doing the right thing when you are scared. I think Miss Nora is brave. I don't know if the lady in the car is bad, but I think she forgot we are real people. Nobody moved. You could hear the fluorescent lights again. You could hear Elise Martle quietly crying on the row behind him. You could hear Vanessa breathing. Anna read the last line. I want her to know I still look both ways even when I am already in the crosswalk. There was silence after that so deep it almost felt physical. Vanessa's eyes had gone wet, but she blinked fast and straightened her shoulders like she could fight tears the same way she fought parking tickets. Judge Caprio set the letter down very carefully. Then he looked at her and asked the question that changed everything. Ms. Lasker, he said, why are you laughing? The question stunned her more than the evidence had. What? Why are you laughing through a hearing where people describe fear, injury, and delay? Because I've been doing this a long time and laughter means different things. Sometimes it means disrespect. Sometimes it means discomfort. Sometimes it means a person cannot stand the sound of the truth, so they interrupt it with a performance. Which is it for you? Vanessa stared at him. For a second, it looked like she might answer honestly. Then the armor snapped back into place. I'm not performing, she said. I'm being ambushed. The room hardened again. You could feel people giving up on her. Judge Caprio's tone stayed calm. No, ma'am. Ambush is when someone doesn't know what's coming. You requested this hearing. She looked down. The judge continued. What you are experiencing is consequence. That was another line the room would carry home. Anna moved to her final witness, expecting perhaps to close on the exhibits. But instead she called Ethan Doyle, a city traffic analyst who had reviewed the timing sequence from the intersection camera east of the clinic. His testimony was clinical and almost boring, which made it powerful. He confirmed the Mercedes advanced against an active crossing guard stop signal by approximately 4 feet before braking. He confirmed the guard's fall occurred within 1.6 seconds of the vehicle's movement. He confirmed the emergency loading obstruction required rerouting of patient intake. He confirmed the audio enhancement process on the surveillance clip. Vanessa stopped interrupting. But she was not humbled yet, not fully. What she was feeling was pressure, exposure, the difference matters. When Anna finished, Judge Caprio offered Vanessa the chance to speak in her own defense. She stood. Her voice at first was steady, controlled, the practiced voice of a woman used to making staff meetings and vendor disputes go her way. I think this has gotten completely out of proportion, she said. Yes, I was impatient. Yes, I made a sarcastic comment I should not have made, but I did not wake up trying to hurt a child or a crossing guard. I was under pressure. I had my own emergency. A murmur went through the room. Judge Caprio leaned forward slightly. What emergency? Vanessa hesitated. Personal. You introduced it. You may explain it or not. She took a breath. My mother had wandered out of her apartment that morning. She has early dementia. I had been on the phone all day with a care coordinator, my ex-husband, my son's school, everybody. My business was falling apart. I had not eaten. I was trying to pick up paperwork from the clinic because they had forms connected to my mother's medication. I was overwhelmed. Now the room shifted in a new way, not forgiveness, but complexity. Because pain changes a story without erasing its facts. Vanessa seized on that shift like a drowning person grabbing at floating wood. People are acting like I'm some monster. I'm not. I'm a person who was having the worst week of her life. Judge Caprio nodded once. Many people in this courtroom have had terrible weeks. He paused. Most of them still stop for children. That line was so clean, so measured, so impossible to argue with, that Vanessa had nowhere to put her anger. It just hung on her face. If you believe pain can explain behavior but not excuse cruelty, hit subscribe. Because what came out next was the first real crack in Vanessa's mask. Judge Caprio asked a few more questions. He did not pounce. He did not grandstand. That was what made it devastating. He asked whether Vanessa had contacted Nora Whitfield after the incident. No. Whether she had asked about Liam. No. Whether she had ever called the clinic to ask how the child was doing. No. Did you sleep that night? He asked. She blinked, barely. I imagine Ms. O'Connell's son didn't either. That one landed hard. Vanessa's voice sharpened. What do you want me to say? Judge Caprio answered immediately. The truth would be a nice beginning. And there it was, another shareable line, another moment when the room knew they were watching something bigger than a fine hearing. Vanessa looked at the judge, then at Nora, then at Elise, then at the little boy who had written the letter. Her mouth tightened. Her chin wobbled once almost invisibly. Then she did what pride often does at the edge of collapse. She doubled down. I think everybody here wants me to beg, she said. I'm not going to perform remorse because it looks good on camera. The gallery erupted in whispered disbelief. One woman near the door actually said, she still doesn't get it. Judge Caprio did not react. He looked down at the clerk. Melissa, was there anything else in the supplemental file? Melissa glanced at the folder, then at Anna. Yes, Your Honor. A returned voicemail transcription from the defendant's listed boo. Sinus line, time-stamped 11:48 p.m. the night of the incident. Vanessa went still. Anna's eyes narrowed. I was prepared to address that on rebuttal. Judge Caprio looked at her. Address it now. Vanessa turned sharply. What voicemail? Melissa read from the transcription sheet. Hi, this is Vanessa Lasker. I got the citation and I know I sounded rude earlier. I wanted to know if the crossing guard lady was okay. And the little girl too. I don't know who to call. So if someone could maybe, Melissa paused, then continued. If someone could maybe tell them I'm sorry for being awful. I'm sorry. Please don't call this number back after 10 because my son will be asleep in the office. The room froze. Vanessa looked like somebody had opened a trapdoor underneath her. Anna explained that the voicemail had been left with the clinic's business after-hours number but not retrieved until days later due to a phone transfer issue. It had been archived and provided to the city only after trial preparation. No one had mentioned it during the hearing because it had just been authenticated. Everything changed. Because suddenly the woman everyone wanted to hate was more complicated than hate is comfortable with. She had been sorry, or at least shaken, or at least human. But then why had she come into court laughing? Judge Caprio asked the obvious question. If you were sorry that night, he said, why are you behaving this way now? Vanessa stared at the floor. The answer when it came did not sound glamorous. It sounded tired. Because if I act sorry, she whispered, then it all becomes real. No one spoke. She kept going, almost against her own will. My mother got lost that morning for 3 hours. Do you understand what that does to your brain? You keep seeing every terrible possibility. Then Jordan called and said the payroll account was overdrawn, and if I moved money again, he was done covering for me. Then my son's school left a message saying he got in a fight because another kid called me crazy. By the time I got to the clinic, I had been holding everything together for so long that when people started telling me to move, to hurry, to care, to do one more thing, she shook her head. I turned into the worst version of myself. Elise Martle wiped her face and looked up. Vanessa's voice broke for the first time. And then when I saw what happened to that woman, and that boy, and that child at the clinic, I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. But if I admitted that here, in front of everybody, then I would have to admit I'm exactly the person I swore I would never become. Judge Caprio watched her carefully. Which person is that? She laughed once, but there was no arrogance left in it, only shame. My father, she said, mean when stressed, cruel when cornered, always the victim in his own story. The room had gone from outrage to something quieter now, not forgiveness, not yet, recognition. Because everybody in life eventually meets the version of themselves they thought only lived in other people. If this is the moment you think the story changed, drop a comment telling us whether truth should reduce punishment or just deepen accountability, because the next few minutes were the ones nobody in that courtroom could predict. Judge Caprio asked if there was anything else she wanted to say. Vanessa turned toward Nora first. Her hands were trembling now, visibly trembling, and she gripped the defense table to steady them. I was wrong, she said. Not technically wrong, morally wrong, human wrong. You stepped in because there was a child there, and instead of seeing that, I saw inconvenience. I am sorry for your wrist and your back and your husband needing help because of what I did. Then she turned to Elise. I don't remember your daughter's face from that day, and I hate that about myself. I was close enough to see she was sick and still decided my stress mattered more. I am sorry. Finally, she looked at Liam. Children can detect fake apologies faster than adults. Everyone knows that. That is why the room held its breath. Vanessa swallowed. You were right, she said to him. I forgot you were real people. Liam did not smile. He nodded once, solemnly, with the dignity children sometimes have when adults finally catch up to the obvious. Most hearings would have ended there. Evidence presented, remorse offered, fines discussed. This one was not done, because Anna DeLuca stood back up. "Your Honor," she said, "the city acknowledges the late discovered voicemail and the defendant's statement today. However, there is one additional fact relevant to disposition." Of course there was. Everyone in the room straightened. Vanessa's eyes closed briefly, as if she had almost believed the storm was passing. Anna held up another document. On December 2, 2025, Ms. Lasker failed to appear for a scheduled pre-hearing conference on this case. The court mailed notice. It was returned unopened. We have reason T. O believe the defendant had vacated her listed residence. Vanessa looked up, tired now, not combative. "I moved into my store." Anna continued, "And on January 11, 2026, the city received an anonymous cashier's check covering Nora Whitfield's medical co-payments and physical therapy balance. The memo line read only, 'For the woman with the stop sign.'" Now even Nora looked stunned. Anna turned to Vanessa. "Did you send that payment?" Vanessa's answer came after a long pause. "Yes." "Why anonymously?" "Because I didn't think I deserved the relief of being thanked for it." Nobody breathed. There it was, the twist nobody saw coming. She had not come to court as a pure villain. She had come as something messier. A woman who had done harm, knew it, tried to fix a sliver of it in secret, then covered the rest with sarcasm, because shame can make people cruel long after guilt has made them decent in private. Judge Caprio leaned back. This was the moment around which the whole hearing turned. Not because Vanessa was suddenly innocent. She was not. The footage existed. The harm existed. But justice gets more difficult when the person who did wrong is not one note, when they are selfish and ashamed, defensive and guilty, proud and broken at the same time. That is where real judgment begins. He asked Nora if she had known about the payment. She had not. He asked Elise whether Vanessa had attempted any contact through the clinic. Janelle confirmed there had been 2 flower deliveries refused because no message was included, and staff did not know how to handle them. Vanessa looked mortified. "I didn't want it to look performative." Judge Caprio gave her a long look. "And yet that concern did not stop you from performing indifference." That sentence struck like a bell, shareable, painful, true. Vanessa nodded once. "I know." Then came the ultimate confrontation. Judge Caprio removed his glasses, set them on the file, and spoke in the voice that made every person in that courtroom sit straighter. "Ms. Lasker, this court could impose the maximum municipal fines, refer your license for review, and end this hearing with punishment alone. And no one in this room would call that unfair. You stood in an emergency zone. You ignored a crossing guard. You endangered children. You mocked the process. You laughed while people described harm. Those are facts." He let the facts sit there. But punishment is not the only tool a court has when a person finally tells the truth. Vanessa's eyes filled again. He continued, "I believe your apology today. I also believe it arrived late. I believe your life has been difficult. I also believe difficulty is where character is tested, not excused. Pain explains behavior. It does not write the verdict." That was the quote of the day. Everyone knew it instantly. He turned to Nora. "Ms. Whitfield, what would justice look like to you?" Nora looked surprised to be asked. She thought for a moment. Then she said something nobody expected. "I don't want her wrecked," Nora said quietly. "I want her interrupted." The room stirred. Nora went on. "People like her move through the world too fast, too sure, too armored. I don't need revenge. I need her to slow down long enough to see other people before she hurts more of them." It was one of the wisest things anyone said all morning. Judge Caprio nodded. Then he asked Elise Martle the same question. Elise's answer came through a damp laugh. "I wanted to hate her," she said. "I really did. but I've been scared and ugly before too. Not like that, but ugly. So I don't want her destroyed either. I want her useful. Useful. That word settled into the room like a verdict before the verdict. If you believe real justice should change people instead of just embarrassing them, like this video. Because what Judge Caprio did next was the part nobody watching could forget. He imposed fines but reduced none of them to nothing. That mattered. There had to be consequence, emergency loading violation, crossing guard violation, municipal negligence assessment, court costs, a defensive driving course. But then he added something more. He ordered Vanessa to complete 120 hours of supervised community service split between Providence Safe Crossings and the pediatric support desk at St. Clair Family Clinic. Not hidden work, public-facing work. The kind where she would have to open doors, carry bags, guide wheelchairs, and stand beside people she once treated like scenery. He ordered her to write individual letters of apology to Nora Whitfield, Liam O'Connell, Elise Martle, and clinic staff, with no lawyer language and no self-justification. He ordered a 6-month review hearing and made it plain that any failure to comply would bring the full weight of the original penalties back. Then he looked straight at her. "And Ms. Lasker," he said, "if you come back in 6 months wearing humility like a costume, I will know." Even the bailiff almost smiled at that one. Vanessa nodded, crying openly now, "I understand." Judge Caprio was not finished. "One more thing," he said, "sell the car." She blinked. "What?" "That Mercedes has become part of your identity in ways that are not helping you. I am not ordering it as a legal condition. I am advising it as a human one." The gallery reacted with a ripple of surprised laughter. Real laughter this time. Relief laughter, the tension breaking. Vanessa gave a wet, stunned half-smile. "You're serious?" "I usually am when I'm trying to save somebody from themselves." There was the fifth quote, maybe the best one. And just when it seemed the hearing had finally found its ending, the unexpected twist around the 7,000-word mark arrived in the gentlest way possible. As Vanessa gathered her things, still shaky, Nora Whitfield stood and approached her. The entire room froze again. Because people know confrontation. They know anger. They know public humiliation. What they do not know how to prepare for is mercy. Nora stopped an arm's length away. Vanessa immediately began apologizing again, the way guilty people do when they think pain is coming. Nora lifted her uninjured hand. "Listen to me," she said. Vanessa looked up. "I forgive you for falling short," Nora said. "I do not forgive you permission to stay there." Vanessa broke. Not cried, broke. Her face folded inward. The years of posing, deflecting, sneering, performing competence, all of it just collapsed at once. She covered her mouth and bent forward and sobbed the ugly, body-shaking sobs of someone whose shame has finally been met by grace instead of destruction. Nobody in the room moved to interrupt it. Judge Caprio looked down at the file to give her privacy. Melissa Tran blinked fast and turned her face away. Officer Ruiz stared at the seal behind the bench. Elise Martle cried again, but this time differently. Liam, who had spent the whole morning learning what adults become under pressure, leaned toward his mother and whispered, "Is she okay?" Colleen kissed the top of his head. "She might be now." That line would have made the whole internet cry. Vanessa straightened eventually. Nora did not hug her. That would have been too easy, too cinematic. Instead, she handed her a folded tissue from her coat pocket and said, "Use this, then go do the work." That was better than a hug, more believable, more earned. If that moment hit you in the chest, drop a comment telling us whether forgiveness should be offered before someone earns it or only after they prove they changed. Because the 6 months that followed became the real story. The first week of community service nearly sent Vanessa running. Providence in late March is damp in a way that finds the seams in your clothes. She showed up to St. Clair on her first assigned Saturday in a plain black puffer jacket, jeans, and old Adidas sneakers that still looked too clean. She had sold nothing yet. The Mercedes was still in the lot. Her hands were manicured. Her apology letter draft was still sitting unsent in the Notes app on her phone because every version sounded either too polished or too pathetic. Janelle Brooks met her at the front desk with a clipboard and exactly zero interest in coddling her. "You'll wheel supplies, escort families, stock juice and crackers, and answer the door," she said. "You are not here to explain yourself to anyone unless they ask. And if a child needs the loading zone, your entire life is now that loading zone. Understood?" Vanessa nodded, understood. The first time she held the front door for a father carrying a limp toddler and an overnight bag, something tightened in her throat. The first time she moved without being asked because she saw an elderly woman struggling with a walker, Janelle noticed but said nothing. The first time she saw Elise Martle again, she almost dropped the clipboard. Sophia was better, pinker, bright-eyed. Her insulin pouch was decorated with little stars. Vanessa opened her mouth to apologize again. Elise saved her from it. "Do your hours," she said, not unkindly, just plainly. So Vanessa did. At Providence Safe Crossings, Nora Whitfield did not treat her like a redemption project. She treated her like a trainee. The orange safety vest was too big. The stop paddle was heavier than it looked. The spring wind on Broad Street was brutal at 7:15 in the morning. Kids were loud. Parents were late. Drivers rolled through yellow lights like every second of their own morning mattered more than everybody else's. "Raise the paddle higher," Nora would say. Or "make eye contact before you step." Or "never trust a vehicle because it appears to slow." One morning, a silver pickup nudged over the line while two second graders were still crossing. Vanessa's whole body snapped with adrenaline. She stepped forward, paddle up, voice sharp. "Stop." The truck stopped. The children passed. And for one breathtaking second, she understood in her bones what Nora had known all along. That safety work feels invisible until the moment it doesn't. That one careless driver can rewrite a dozen lives. That attention is a form of love. She went home and sat in her parked Mercedes for 12 minutes without starting it. 3 days later, she sold it. Not for symbolic drama, because Judge Caprio had been right. The car had become part costume, part shield, part weapon. She replaced it with a used blue 2018 Honda CR-V she bought from a dealer in Warwick with cloth seats and a faint coffee smell she could not get rid of. The first time Mason rode in it, he looked around and said, "This feels more like us." That sentence cut deeper than any courtroom line. Vanessa's letters took longer. The one to Nora was 4 pages handwritten on cream stationery from her own store, then rewritten on lined paper because cream stationery suddenly felt like hiding again. The one to Elise admitted she had prioritized looking composed over acting humane. The one to Liam said, "You were right to write that I forgot people are real. I have that sentence on my refrigerator now." The one to clinic staff was the hardest, because institutions absorb selfishness every day and almost never hear sincere regret. Janelle read hers in the break room and left it folded in her pocket for the rest of the shift. By May, the staff at St. Clair had stopped thinking of Vanessa as the woman from the video. They started thinking of her as the one who stayed late to restock juice boxes, who remembered which child liked dinosaur stickers, who never parked in the front circle, who quietly paid for a broken vending machine panel after a frustrated father smashed it. But transformation never happens in a straight line. People love tidy redemption stories because real ones are messier. In early June, Vanessa had a setback. A mother at the clinic recognized her from local chatter and said, loud enough for others to hear, "Aren't you the lady who blocked the diabetic kid?" The lobby went still. Old Vanessa would have snapped. New Vanessa wanted to disappear. Instead, she nodded. "Yes," she said, "I am." The woman folded her arms. Then why are they letting you work here? Vanessa could have explained the sentence, the service, the judge, the hours, the effort. She could have defended herself with progress. She did not. Because I did harm, she said, and this is part of making less of it. Janelle, who heard the exchange from the medication room, looked up sharply. The mother said nothing else, neither did Vanessa. That afternoon, Janelle handed her a juice crate without a word, then later muttered, "Better answer." For Vanessa, that counted as applause. If you think real change is proven in the small moments when nobody owes you kindness, hit that subscribe button, because the 6-month review brought one last twist nobody saw coming. By August, Providence was hot, sticky, and restless. Back-to-school traffic returned. Nora's wrist was stronger. Liam crossed with more confidence. Sophia came to the clinic now carrying a plush fox with one ear bent. Mason spent some weekends helping at Vienne & Co., which Vanessa had downsized from a glossy showroom to a smaller, warmer studio with affordable consignment pieces and a handwritten sign near the register that read, "Take your time. People first." People noticed. Not because she announced anything, because she stopped needing to. On September 22, 2026 at 9:10 a.m., Vanessa walked back into the same Providence courtroom for her compliance review. No trench coat this time, no designer tote, no sunglasses indoors. She wore a navy cardigan, black slacks, and simple flats. Her hair was pulled back. The first thing she carried was not coffee. It was a thick envelope of completed service records, signed supervisor reports, defensive driving certification, and 4 sealed response letters from the people she had apologized to. The courtroom was fuller than before. Word had spread. People wanted to see whether the woman who laughed had changed or simply learned better lines. Even Melissa Tran seemed curious. Judge Caprio took the bench and looked at Vanessa for a long second before glancing down at the file. "Ms. Lasker," he said, "you appear on time." A faint ripple of laughter moved through the room. "Yes, Your Honor," she said, "early actually." "Dangerous habit, keep it." There was warmth in the room now, cautious warmth, earned by time. Anna DeLuca rose and summarized compliance. All hours completed and exceeded. No violations. Excellent evaluations from both organizations. One note from Nora Whitfield stating, "She has learned to hold a stop paddle like it matters." One from Janelle Brooks reading, "She stopped making herself the center of the room, which in a clinic is a useful skill." Another from the driving instructor, noting that Vanessa had requested additional modules on pedestrian safety and distracted driving beyond the required curriculum. Then Anna added something unexpected. The city also received proof that Ms. Lasker funded replacement crosswalk rain ponchos for 6 Providence crossing guards and donated pediatric emergency snack kits to St. Clair, without public acknowledgement. Vanessa looked embarrassed. "I wasn't trying to make a thing of it." Judge Caprio glanced up. "You're making a very poor show of seeking credit. I approve." The room laughed. Then Nora Whitfield, who had come again in her lavender blouse, raised a hand from the gallery. Judge Caprio allowed her to speak. "She's left out one part," Nora said. Vanessa turned startled. Nora smiled slightly. "On rainy mornings, she gets there 20 minutes early and wipes down the sign handles because they slip when wet. And one of the children dropped his lunchbox in the gutter last month, and she climbed down in dress pants to fish it out. Complained the whole time, mind you, but she did it." Laughter again, real laughter, the kind that includes people instead of humiliating them. Vanessa covered her face for a second, smiling through tears. Then Elise Martle stood. Sophia was with her this time, wearing a yellow headband and holding the bent-eared fox. The little girl looked toward Vanessa, then toward the judge, and then lifted one hand in a shy wave. Judge Caprio's expression softened. Elise spoke with the kind of measured honesty that leaves nowhere for sentimentality to hide. My daughter remembers the day of the incident in flashes, she said. She remembers being scared. She remembers the woman in the car. But now she also remembers the woman at the clinic who keeps apple juice in the bottom drawer and knows how to distract her during finger sticks. Sophia leaned into her mother's side. Elise went on. I'm not saying one thing erases the other. It doesn't. But I am saying my daughter no longer points at white SUVs and gets quiet. She talks about Miss Vanessa at the desk. That matters to me. Vanessa wiped her eyes again. This time she did not hide it. Then the final sealed letter was opened at the judge's request. It was from Vanessa herself, written not to the victims but to the court, summarizing what the last 6 months had taught her. Judge Caprio read parts aloud. I used to think dignity came from being important. Now I think dignity comes from being useful. The courtroom went still. Another line. He kept reading. I used to think stress excused sharpness because I was carrying so much. Now I know the people I hurt were carrying things too. I just did not ask what they were. And then the line that made even Officer Ruiz clear his throat and look at the floor. The loudest laugh in that courtroom was fear wearing makeup. Nobody forgot that one. If that line deserves to live in your head all day, like this video, and share it with someone who thinks accountability is just punishment, because the final ruling was the kind people talk about for years. Judge Caprio set the letter down and looked at Vanessa. Ms. Lasker, 6 months ago you stood where you are now and tried to protect yourself from shame by acting smaller than your conscience. Today you stand here without armor. That is not nothing. He paused. The court finds you in full compliance. Fines remain satisfied. Service completed. Matter closed. A breath of relief moved through the room. But he was not finished. I want to say something for everyone here, he continued. We live in a time when public humiliation is easy and private repair is rare. Many people would have preferred that this defendant leave here branded forever by one ugly day. It is emotionally satisfying to watch instant karma. I understand that. But justice worth remembering does more than satisfy spectators. It forces truth, demands repair, and then leaves room for people to become more than the worst thing they have done. Nobody shifted. Nobody whispered. That was the line the whole hearing had been building toward. Vanessa stood very still, tears sliding quietly now, no effort to wipe them away. Judge Caprio looked directly at her. Do not waste the mercy you were given. I won't, she said. And everybody in the room believed her. After the hearing ended, people did something unusual. They did not rush out. They lingered. They talked softly. They watched Vanessa walk first to Nora, then to Elise and Sophia, then to Officer Ruiz. She thanked each of them without turning the moment into another speech. When she got to Officer Ruiz, she said, "You were doing your job and I treated you like an obstacle." He nodded. "You're not the first. I'd like to be one of the few who means it when I say I'm sorry." That earned the smallest smile from him. Then keep stopping at crosswalks. Outside, Providence was bright with early autumn sun. City Hall's stone steps were warm. Traffic moved in waves down Dorrance Street.